Well, joining us on the program now, Liberal MP David Coleman from Sydney. We hope to cross to Perth to speak to Louise Pratt shortly. But first to you, David Coleman, on universities. Such a monumental shift in the way our universities are run and the way in which fees are collected. Why wasn't this mentioned before the election?
Oh, look, David, I don't accept the premise of that question at all, that it's a monumental shift. I mean, the government obviously faces a very serious financial situation in terms of the $30 million that we're borrowing every day to pay our interest bill due to Labor's mismanagement. And we've had to look at various sensible measures. Now, the measures in terms of university arrangements, nobody who isn't required to pay, nobody's required to pay up front. The HEC system and help systems continue. In fact, more people have access to that system, and it's only required, people are only required to repay those debts once they earn over $50,000, and that's appropriate because people who go to uni do tend to earn quite a bit more over the course of their career than people who don't go to uni, and it's entirely appropriate that they make a contribution to that cost.
Sure, but you don't see then the complete deregulation of fees and universities' ability to, for the first time in Australia, charge whatever they want without a cap from the federal government as a significant change to the system?
Well, I think it's a sensible change, David, because it basically recognises that different courses are different universities are different, and there are different costs associated with providing different courses and indeed different levels of demand. And it's appropriate that universities are able to reflect those costs and the levels of demand for their courses. And importantly, nobody is required to pay those fees up front. They only pay the contribution to the fee once they graduate and have a decent job. And I think the other important point, David, that people need to bear in mind is that 20% of any increased revenue that universities generate from this system has to be put back into scholarships for disadvantaged students. So no, I think it's a very sensible approach.
So how then do you view the protests that have taken place across Australia today?
Oh, look, David, I mean, we're a proud democracy and people are welcome to protest, and that's entirely their right to do so. And there's obviously a long tradition of campus activity in Australia, and that is their right. I very strongly disagree with the substance of those protests, because it's appropriate that people who frankly get a head start in terms of their earning potential when they finish university. It's appropriate that those people pay a fair contribution when they've graduated and when they're earning over $50,000 a year. And I think that's appropriate, and so certainly don't agree with the content of the protest, but people of course are free to protest should they wish.
And are you disappointed that the Prime Minister had to cancel his event at Deakin University this morning?
Oh, look, well, obviously he had to respond to advice as he did, and I noted that there was concern that it could divert police resources from other important issues in the Geelong area, so that was no doubt the right call.
Okay, well, we hope to bring in Louise Pratt soon and we can get her opinion on this university's issue. But for now, I just want to move on, David Coleman, while we wait for Louise Pratt, and ask you about the incident that happened on radio today. It's had a whole lot of press on social media. We've talked about it here on Sky. Tony Abbott, when he was, gave a wink and a smirk while that pensioner, who also happened to be earning a few dollars as a phone sex worker, called in. What do you make of the furious reaction that has been levelled against the Prime Minister from some quarters?
Oh, look, David, I mean, he was obviously communicating off camera with the presenter that he was happy to proceed with the question. Look, we as a nation face serious economic issues. We've got massive debt. We've got a legacy of mismanagement. We've got some serious structural issues that we have to address in our economy. And frankly, that's what you know, that's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about substantive issues. People are free to react to things, but you know, that is a very minor moment if there ever was one.
Well, I agree. Let's move on to the budget and the savings measures that the Coalition has put forward, many of which are, it seems, going to be blocked in the Senate. Chris Bowen today, when he addressed the National Press Club, suggested that the Coalition instead scrap its $22 billion paid parental leave scheme. That's $22 billion over 4 years, and that would more than make up for the $18.5 billion worth of savings that Labor has lined up to block.
Oh, look, you know, Chris Bowen's credibility on economic issues, David, is modest to say the least. I mean, these are the guys that haven't passed a surplus budget since 1989, and that is, you know, 25 years ago. So, you know, the people of Australia elected us to take sensible economic decisions. I think there is a widespread understanding in the community of the economic and fiscal mess that we face, and addressing it is what we're going to do. You know, to pick up your point on PPL, you know, that is an important reform, and you know, we believe that a woman who is on $50,000 or $60,000 shouldn't take a pay cut when she stays home to look after a baby. Why should she be paid more to go on holiday or on sick leave than she's paid, you know, during that most important time of taking time out to look after a newborn baby? So, you know, PPL is an important reform, and you know, and Mr. Bowen can, you know, suggest what he likes, but frankly, I mean, you know, Mr. Bowen has zero credibility on these matters.
David Coleman, if you wouldn't mind, I'll get you to stand by because I'm told that Louise Pratt is just very close by, a couple of minutes away. If you wouldn't mind waiting, a panel obviously works a lot better when we've got a politician from each side. So in the meantime, I want to play Deanna Taylor, who we spoke to earlier on Sky. She was one of the protest organisers in Sydney today. Deanna Taylor, thanks for your time. What do you make of the Prime Minister's decision to cancel a visit to a university in Geelong over security concerns?
I think the security concerns that the Prime Minister and Minister Pyne have been talking about have been largely overstated. To me, it indicates that the Prime Minister doesn't want to show his face around students, and obviously knows that students are very outraged at the budget that was handed down last week, and not just students and not even just staff, but I think the broader public as well. And we saw that at the March in May protests on the weekend. The Prime Minister and Minister Pyne have obviously an investment in making it look like the protesting students are violent rabble-rousers who are out to cause trouble, which is not the case at all. We're simply voicing our opposition to the measures that were included in the budget and making it clear that we reject them outright.
We have seen, though, some pretty physical protests over the weekend, one where Julie Bishop was jostled and another where Sophie Mirabella, who's not even in Parliament anymore, also had to be escorted out by security. You may not intend for these protests to go that way, but do you condemn what has happened over the past few days?
I don't make it a habit of condemning other students within the student body for acting as they see fit, and students who have concerns about what was in the budget and want to voice those concerns. The National Union of Students is conscious of the fact that it's really only our organisation and a couple of other key peak student bodies that have access to the corridors of power and are able to lobby parliamentarians in Parliament. For most students, that's not something that they have access to, and the only way they can voice their discontent is by protesting and demonstrations. So we support students who wish to peacefully demonstrate and wish to voice their opposition to government policy of the day, and that's especially true of this government and their budget that they handed down last week.
So do you see this as a victory for the student movement that Tony Abbott had to cancel this visit?
What I see as a victory for the student movement is that for once our issues are getting really great attention. There's been a real spotlight shown on students, student debt, the higher education sector at large, And in a budget that was full of some pretty horrific measures, I'm very glad that students have had the airtime and been able to talk about our concerns and been able to demonstrate and show that students and staff and the broader public are opposed to the measures in the budget.
That's Deanna Taylor from the National Union of Students. We spoke to her earlier today. New Zealand news is next across the Tasman. In Australia, stay with us as PM Agenda continues with Louise Pratt and David Coleman.
Without health insurance, you could be in a world of pain by the June 30 tax deadline. That's why you need to take the iSelect D-Tax. It'll help you purge yourself of those nasty taxins. It's easy. First, we take a variety of fresh funds, crunch the numbers. We'll even help with the paperwork. Voila. So take the iSelect D-Tax and get health insurance before June 30. Why is it orange?
Today, Plan urgently needs people like you to sponsor a child. When I saw Plan's life-saving work, I was inspired to sponsor a boy and a girl. I've seen how sponsorship gives you a personal connection with a child. You'll get wonderful letters and drawings, and you'll support projects that help many other children too. If, like me, you're a parent, you know we all try to give our kids the best start in life. Surely every child deserves that. That's why I'm asking you to call now or visit changeyourlife.org.au to sponsor a child today. You can help make the difference between children going to school or not, having clean water and enough food or not. That can be the difference between life and death. These children need sponsors right now. Please call 1-800-666164 or visit changeyourlife.org.au today. Thank you.
Honestly, I knew it was time for a change, but I didn't want to spend a lot. So I got this new Windows laptop. It's a proper PC and costs much less than my old one. Runs Office, has a desktop I know, and new stuff, like a touch screen and my favourite apps. So this can go now. But not that.
TPG presents our Unlimited Bundle. Get unlimited ADSL2 Plus with home phone line rental. Unlimited calls to local and standard national numbers. Unlimited calls to Australian mobile numbers. And unlimited calls to selected international countries. Plus a Wi-Fi modem. All for just $79.99 a month. Yep, $79.99 a month. TPG is a multi-award winner.
tpg.com.au.
Have you been up all night?
I'm looking for hotel deals.
Why didn't you just go to Hotels Combined? They compare hundreds of travel sites in seconds.
Hotels Combined.
Find the best price in seconds at hotelscombined.com. This program brought to you by ANZ Smart Choice Super. See your super alongside your everyday banking.
Thanks for watching PM Agenda. Let's get the latest headlines with Helen. Okay, no, don't worry about the headlines. We will have them, of course, at the top of the hour. Let's go straight to our political panel, Louise Pratt and David Coleman. First to you, Louise Pratt. I want to firstly ask you about the protests that have happened across the country today. What's your reaction?
Look, I very much support the right of students to protest today. You know, these are extreme measures that are being taken by the government. If I was a student, I'd be out protesting too. Nevertheless, these protests should certainly be peaceful and non-violent, and I would hope they remain so.
And the issue itself, the deregulation of university fees, how significant is that? Because before you joined us, David Coleman said that this was not a monumental shift to universities in his eyes.
Look, to deregulate fees is an extraordinary shift because it essentially means we've got the cost is going to be uncapped. That hits particularly female students particularly hard. If you think about the fact you need to pay back your student debt over time, women are more likely to have to take breaks to raise children, etc. So you can't guarantee that you're going to be able to easily pay back what are going to be mighty large student loans.
Okay, well, moving on, Senator Pratt, I did just ask before the break David Coleman about the budget savings that are being blocked by Labor, some $18.5 billion worth of savings out of this budget, another $5 billion or so that Labor actually had as its policy before the election. Is Labor really at risk of being seen to be putting the nation and the budget at risk through political opportunism?
Look, I don't think so. The coalition has no mandate to be taking these radical measures. You know, the government lied to the electorate, the coalition lied to the electorate. I faced election just in April and I lost my seat thanks to these lies that have been told. You know, the public has been lied to, I've been lied to. They have no mandate to do these things. And, you know, I will stand by as a loyal Labor Party senator to make sure that the government doesn't get away with doing this kind of damage to the Australian people.
So, David, if I could just, jump in.
Go for it, David Coleman.
Look, the fundamental thing we were elected to do is clean up Labor's mess. Clean up the fact that we're paying $30 million of interest every day on their bill. Clean up the fact that we're on our way to $2/3 of $1 trillion of debt if we don't do something about it, and take the difficult decisions. And we don't shy away.
New taxes.
Well, and we don't shy away from the fact that there have been some difficult decisions.
You knew the state of the budget in April. You knew exactly the state of the budget in April when I faced election. It is extraordinary that you were still sticking to these ideas of no new taxes when you knew exactly what you were about to dish out.
Well, and David Coleman, if I might just ask you one as well, this idea of fundamental promises, that has only emerged since the budget. There was never a time during the election campaign where Tony Abbott said, our fundamental promise is to get the budget back to surplus. He listed a few things, but as Louise said, he also ruled out a whole lot of things that you're now doing.
Well, look, the job we're elected to do, David, is to fix the mess. That is a mess that has been getting bigger every year for the 6 years of Labor rule. You know, when they came into power, there was $45 billion in the bank. In 6 years, there's net debt of $200 billion. And that is critical because that is the interest bill on that debt means that we have less to invest in important services. And, you know, as the Prime Minister has said in the budget, there are difficult decisions and there are some difficult impacts. But we're not going to shy away from those hard decisions because they're in the long-term interest of the nation.
I want to point you both to the Press Club speech today by the Shadow Treasurer Chris Bowen, who believes that 500,000 new jobs could be created by 2033 if the government invests in high-growth technology companies. He sees tech companies as a way for the country to boost growth without cutting back on the size of government. Perhaps first to you, David Coleman, and without notice, what do you make of that? Is that a way forward, feasibly?
Look, I haven't looked at Chris Bowen's speech in any detail. I actually have, prior to being in politics, worked in quite a few high-tech businesses, and there's no question that they are critical to the future of the nation. The issue, as always, though, is what's the appropriate role for government. And great businesses are generated by great entrepreneurs, not by big government programs. And in any discussion about the importance of the high-tech sector, we've always got to maintain a reality check and know that the real spirit of growth and enterprise comes from the private sector and the startup sector, and not from top-down government projects.
Louise, currently technology startups account for about 0.2% of gross domestic product, according to Chris Bowen. He believes it could account for 4% of GDP by 2033. That seems like a huge increase. Is it possible?
Look, it certainly is possible. There's no doubt that these are the jobs of the future. What I worry about, though, is that the coalition is going to leave these jobs behind simply because we won't have an NBN that's good enough. You know, they're already leaving behind the clean energy sector with massive cuts. You know, these are the jobs of the future, whereas what the coalition is doing is, you know, just propping up the jobs of the past when we know it's in the best interest of the economy to make those changes now. So things like the high-tech industry, the clean energy sector, this is where we need to be headed, but you know, this is not where the coalition is leading us.
And sorry, David, I have to address the NBN point. You know, it is a very, very good example of the gross incompetence of the previous government. This is a program, an important national program, but one that was planned with just an absolute lack of depth, a lack of thoroughness, and which saw cost blowouts of literally tens of billions of dollars in the forecast. Now, we are going to build a great NBN, but we're going to do it tens of billions of dollars cheaper and faster. So if Labor wants to hold up the NBN as an example of its understanding of how the high-tech economy should work, you know, that's a debate we'll have every day, because that project was appallingly managed under Labor.
Louise, Pratt, I just want to ask you a couple of questions on something you mentioned earlier. You said that you lost your seat as a result of the lies that were told by the coalition. Another huge factor, of course, was the union dominance and the fact that Joe Bullock managed to get into the #1 spot for the Senate ahead of you, even though you are already in the Senate. Now, we saw last weekend that Bill Shorten's attempts to weaken union dominance in the party were essentially deferred and diluted as his factional opponents who stood to lose power banded together to defeat those changes. What do you make of Bill Shorten's attempts that have been in large part stymied to this point by the union factions?
Look, I commend Bill Shorten for making those steps. The response from grassroots party members is absolutely overwhelming. I was at a party reform meeting just last night in Perth. We've got our state conference coming up. And, you know, these changes have to come forth. So, but it will mean that those with vested interests in the current power structures need to vote for change, but they need to vote for change for their own survival. You know, we were reduced from 6 senators to just 1. From out of 6 senators, Labor only got 1 at the last Senate election. So, you know, this is a very real problem that we need to face head on, and I commend Bill Shorten for, you know, putting his plans forward. Those vested interests need to vote for change ultimately in their own best interest.
But you may commend him for trying, but what about the fact he's not succeeding because of those factions?
Look, the opportunity to do this will be at the state conferences around the nation, and indeed at the national conference next year. Bill Shorten can't change the rules by himself. He's a wonderful leader, but that doesn't mean that he can wave a magic wand. You know, we have structures in the party that need to be amended, and we will have a lot of momentum towards those changes towards our conference next year, I believe.
And Louise, Pratt, one more on a different topic which we already covered with David Coleman, and that is the wink and the smirk from Tony Abbott today when he was on radio. What did you make of that whole episode?
Oh, look, I was appalled. I was watching the TV at the time that it happened, and, you know, it completely overlooks the fact that, you know, this woman is a pensioner who has disabilities, which means she can't work outside of the home. And as she rightly pointed out, is this the kind of job you would want your grandmother doing? You know, I approve of people who want to work in the sex industry, that they should have the right to do so. But it's very clear that this woman has been driven to those measures because she cannot make ends meet, and that Tony Abbott's currently making it worse. So I'm completely appalled that our Prime Minister would want to trivialise the plight of this woman.
Okay, Louise, Pratt, David Coleman, we will have to leave it there. Sorry we didn't get back to you, David Coleman, but you got a good go before the break. Thank you both very much for joining us on PM Agenda. We will have more right after this.